Hello, and thank you for watching my webinar on integrating whole-person librarianship into public library services. My name is Kara Tudor, and I am in the Master of Library and Information Studies program at Valdosta State University. I am graduating in the spring of this year, and this past year I read the book Whole-Person Librarianship, A Social Work Approach to Patron Services by Sarah Zettervall and Mary Nenow. The book describes how to create partnerships between librarians and social workers and emphasizes the connections that are rapidly being made between the two. Librarians are guided through the practical process of facilitating connections among libraries, social workers, and social services. And the book explains why those connections are important and how to put them into the context of a national movement. I'm personally passionate about advocating for people experiencing homelessness or other life crises who often seek respite, information, and assistance in libraries. In the same way that social workers are helping professionals, librarians have historically advocated for and supported low-income groups. However, librarians may require additional knowledge, skills, and capacities to provide adequate support. Thus, social workers have become integral to innovative library initiatives that serve low-income and homeless patrons. Whole-person librarianship began in 2012 when Sarah Zettervall and her social worker friend Mary Nenow co-led a summer book club for teen Somali girls. A library student at the time, Sarah found social work concepts addressed many of the human service gaps that she saw in what she was learning in library school. She started looking for more information and found there was little available, so with collaboration and encouragement, both Sarah and Mary founded the Whole-Person Librarianship site as a blog in 2013. At the time, there were only a handful of libraries with social workers on staff, and their website was the only space collecting and sharing that burgeoning movement. You can still view these original weekly articles in their first blog posts. Over time, the movement towards library social work collaboration has expanded. In 2017, there were dozens of libraries with social workers on staff and many more that hosted regular social service office hours and other partnerships. Even as public libraries and some academic libraries discovered the benefits of connecting patrons directly with social services, much of what Sarah and Mary's original interest was in these collaborations is only starting to come to fruition. With the advent of libraries serving as safe spaces in the midst of unrest and librarians rediscovering the power of information literacy post-US election, many more librarians are searching for tools to foster empathy and understanding in themselves and their communities. Social work offers many of those tools. Their book was published in 2019 with Libraries Unlimited. Now, the mission of whole-person librarianship has shifted to educate librarians and library staff on relevant social work concepts and tools. Mary is now an associate professor of social work, and Sarah has led community engagement projects in several types of libraries. They both offer training and consulting services on a sliding fee scale and speak to Master of Social Work and MLIS classes for free on request. The blog primarily serves now to provide updates on their work and alerts as to when they are presenting at conferences and online. In our current political climate, libraries are among the few public spaces that feel welcoming and safe for everyone. Nevertheless, as librarians strive to provide honest service, we are challenged to meet the needs of patrons whose life experiences differ greatly from ours. We can learn a lot from social workers who approach their clients with empathy while maintaining professional boundaries in dealing with these challenges. In whole-person librarianship, librarians know from, interact with, and serve diverse patrons using social work concepts. As a part of whole-person librarianship, we can learn how to build empathy skills, such as cultural humility in person and environment, which we can then apply immediately to our library practices. We also learn where we can find more information and support at the end of this webinar. Further, in today's lesson, we will explore the core values of social work and how they align with the values and ethics of librarianship. Following that, we will discuss the person and the environment and cultural humility, both of these concepts that can be applied to libraries. First, let me briefly touch on the core values of the American Library Association and the National Association of Social Workers. The purpose of this is to demonstrate that we share several core values. First, those who work in social work are competent and committed to social justice. Second, professionalism and lifelong learning are part of our librarianship. Third, librarians have special things to offer. And fourth, social work and information management are centered on the individual. Finally, using social work as an example, we can learn from the interpersonal aspect of our library work. As we go through this, I just want to remind everyone that we are not advocating librarians to become social workers. The most important thing to remember is to be intentional about the boundaries you set for yourself. For example, if a patron comes to you and says, "I would like to learn how to bake cookies, and this is the first time I've ever done it," you can get them cookbooks. If you want to, you can direct them to YouTube videos. Whether or not they achieve the results they want depends on them. If it doesn't work, they can come back and ask you for help and try something else. I know that that's a simple example, but it illustrates the difficulty of setting boundaries when dealing with someone with higher needs. It is important to keep that in mind. We talk about understanding the person and their environment as one of the key constructs and structures, but looking at the person and their environment, we consider how they act rather than what they might be going through. The environment must be taken into account. Whenever I talk to my students, I emphasize this idea. If you need help understanding what is happening, it is probably because you need to have the whole picture. In other words, I followed the recipe exactly as you did, very close to what was written in the recipe. It's our job to figure out what went wrong. For example, our patron may have mixed baking soda with baking powder during the whole process. They may have substituted water for milk if they didn't have any. As a result, all of our practices are informed by this information. In addition, social workers engage with people in more than one-on-one settings. Furthermore, librarians and social workers engage with communities and systems to ensure that our policies are fair to everyone. We want to give people the best chance to make the best cookies. Social workers use assessment as an example of getting more information, just like librarians use reference transactions. The first thing we do is talk to them, we learn their story, we build relationships, and we build trust with them. The environment in which they live, issues of power and privilege, and race must also be considered. We can better understand someone's situation by putting together all of the different components. Our goal is to do this before we come up with a solution. Before we offer our expertise or advice, we must first understand the problem and the issue of the person across the table from us or next to us. However, it is important to understand that we all come into a place with many factors and ingredients. People are also influenced by their context when thinking at that level. In addition to being an institution, the library is also part of a larger system. In other words, you are not responsible for how the cookie turns out. It's also important to remember that the library has a place in this system. Some examples of this include how libraries provide a safe haven for youth, offering many activities that draw children in. Summer meals provided at the library act as a magnet to draw these children to these activities and keep them mentally engaged, providing educational enrichment and decreasing summer side effects. Another example comes from 2010, when President Obama signed the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. This signified the biggest reform of the healthcare system in over 50 years, and many libraries across America supported ACA enrollment. Librarian environment is an example of what might be referred to as a continuum of care. I love the idea of continuum of care. Social workers often meet their clients in libraries. Librarians refer patrons to social service providers as needed. Social workers can provide case management and referrals to organizations that assist with housing. People may return to the library in their new context due to integrating into the community. A general rule of thumb is to be careful about our assumptions. Find out where homeless organizations are located and meet with them if you have difficulty finding a place to stay or if you're struggling to find a place to stay. It is common for organizations to hire outreach workers to do this type of work. There are resources and people you can contact if you need something like that in your library. This can be fixed or solved later, but it's a great way to build relationships. For example, the Department of Human Services may come and offer information on homelessness, or the National Association for Mental Illness may come and do a presentation about mental illness at your homeless shelters or social service agencies. The first step to doing any work is to establish those relationships. The concept of cultural humility goes beyond cultural competence. It includes a lifelong commitment to self-evaluation and self-criticism. Power dynamics and imbalances are acknowledged, and partnerships are formed with people and groups who advocate for others and each other. I really love this quote. Those who practice cultural humility work to increase their self-awareness of their own biases and perceptions and engage in a lifelong self-reflection process about how to put these aside and learn from clients. Cultural competence is something most of us are familiar with. As a result, it can go one step further. Because we are all about collaboration, we borrowed this wonderful concept about cultural humility from the medical profession. During the mid-1990s, when the police beat Rodney King, 2 nurses at a Los Angeles public hospital developed it. During that time, diversity training was prevalent. When media coverage of diversity issues became more culturally sensitive, we did not see the results we would have expected. It really is a lifelong learning process to cultivate cultural humility. Our knowledge is only as good as the culture of the individual. So rather than being something we know for sure, it is always evolving. There is also a piece of institutional accountability in it. Although we can be sensitive, humble, and empathetic, if our institutions do not support us, we will find it difficult to practice these qualities. The client, or our patrons, is the expert in their own life. As a result, they know what has happened and what they need based on their own experiences. Therefore, we really rely on them to provide that for us as well. As librarians and social workers, we have a distinct advantage. As a result of our training, we are better listeners and can gather the information we need. Our biases and perspectives, however, affect how we approach our work. As a result, we must constantly check our behavior. Having a sounding board and good advice when discussing how we interact with our clients or communities is useful. For instance, San Francisco Public Library hired a full-time social worker for the first time. In her role as a social worker in the library, she supervises a group of outreach workers who provide one-on-one assistance to patrons. At the beginning and end of each shift, she brings everyone together. This is a good example of reflecting on challenges. Each shift change allows workers to share their experiences as she talks to them about what they encountered. Together they can solve problems. If they have difficult interactions, they can discuss leaving them behind before going home. And in this case, we are talking about reflective practice. Giving people a chance to process these sorts of things can be very helpful if we can make time for them. The third bullet point is moving away from this idea of the checklist in our education and issues of privilege and discrimination that our clients have experienced and brought to us. Supervision and relationship building takes time. We are already so busy that we can only do a few of the great things we know we should do. It takes less time to establish relationships with people in the community who can help us meet those needs and provide us with supervision opportunities. Returning to that librarian environment continuum and handing it off to the social service provider requires the development of a relationship. We need to recognize that there is a considerable amount of time involved in many of the tasks we are talking about. So while it may seem time-consuming, the payoff in the end makes it a worthwhile investment. It is not so much about your path through libraries as it is about your approach. Your approach allows you to gather data from both sides of the picture and better understand the environment. Your position when we are out in the community is based on facts, and it's external to you. In recent years, we have seen this as one of the best practices in community engagement. Being in a society without an agenda is a great way to practice cultural humility. Several examples of the cultural humility approach are already being used in our libraries. Teen advisory groups are a great example. We must approach that with the attitude I spoke about on the previous slide. Here, we listen to their needs. In addition, you could hold the library space that you have. For parents of children on the autism spectrum, having a free room where their child can decompress is helpful. When you have a free room, people are assured that it's okay to let the family reserve it. Another example is it could be used as a nursing room. Or your community may have a large Muslim population, and they pray several times a day without a place to do so. This free room could be a prayer space as well. It is great when we can adjust the use of a free room when we are diverse and open-minded. We can discover that it might appeal to people in situations we did not anticipate. Unintentional consequences often arise when we serve the needs of a group or address a particular issue. You might be saying, well, now what? I want you to do a couple activities. I want you to brainstorm resources available outside your library that you can direct your patrons to. Brainstorm community partners or other libraries that you can collaborate with. Brainstorm how to discover your patrons' information-seeking behaviors. But I will leave you with a few ideas. Keep your collections up to date to support the social service needs of your community. Plan a community awareness event such as forums on topics like homelessness, diversity, senior health, winter supply drives, suicide prevention. Host programs that support civility and cultural awareness, financial literacy, socialization, mindfulness. Create resource guides to connect your patrons with local social service resources. Partner with social service providers, social workers, homelessness engagement coordinators, public health staff, and other healthcare providers. Improve your de-escalation and communication skills through training and professional reading. And always have on hand a who to call referral information ready to provide to any of your patrons in crises. I just want to say thank you so much for watching my webinar. Please go to these resources, follow them for some more information on whole person librarianship, and take care of yourself and your community. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.